Welcome back, One Piece fans, to another episode of What's the Difference, the Shaman King edition, where I compare a given media's various different adaptations. And in terms of the Shaman King series, while the newer anime has been following the manga as closely as possible, while at the same time still cutting certain moments, bits of dialogue here and there in order to speed along events, which has detrimental impacts of its own, the original anime has long since diverged from the manga's content, although certain story beats still happened, even before they even happened in the manga. Last episode, we saw Yo resurrected, as well as the start of the final battle of Yo versus Ren, and we'll be continuing that here. We're picking up with volume 29 of the Shaman King manga, chapter 256, High Spirits and Fate. We'll also be looking into episode 58, Flaming Angel, of the original Shaman King 2001 series, and episode 45, the first and the last of the 2021 Shaman King anime series. Let's jump in and see what's the difference. So we see Ren battling against Yo, and whereas in the manga and newer anime, Ren manages to utterly decimate Yo, but in the original anime, Yo maintained his lead throughout, as he completely understood a lot of the training and teachings that they both went through with Mikihisa. The newer anime actually cuts out a lot of dialogue between Manta and Red Sub, which actually goes to show that Red Sub also believes that Yo is being naive and wanting to actually save Hao and not just simply defeat him. So you get a little bit more of that divide in ideals. And whereas in the original anime, Ren is simply trying to gain a better understanding of why he's fighting and what he wants to do overall. And honestly, Ren and Yo are a lot more evenly matched. But in all versions, Ren is completely at a loss. There's this conflict within him, and he just can't understand Yo and why he can't seem to defeat him. In the original anime, Ren does manage to beat back Yo to a certain degree, and the fight does offer Ren a bit of a sense of clarity. But in the newer anime and the manga, Ren is more confused than ever, as Yo thinks that Ren doesn't have the conviction to take down Yo simply because of a clash of ideals. Like, Ren struck Yo with the intent to kill him because, at this point, death is almost irrelevant in the series to a certain degree when you have healers who can resurrect. But there's something deeper to what Yo has been able to do. Some kind of elemental control that he's managed to master. Almost like he managed to ground the electrical attack before it could do too much damage to Yo. And as Yo goes in for the strike, in comes Horo to hold it off. Because it's not just Ren battling, it's also Horo, who also has a difference of ideals from Yo. And with the patch, they feel like the winners have pretty much already been decided, and they already know where things are going, pretty much according to their plans. But the patch do know that Gandara is after the 5 elemental spirits, so it's only a matter of time before they attain them. The newer anime also cuts out the fact that Lyserg is making his way to the stadium, as they enter into chapter 257, Another Conclusion. As while Ryu and Faust are down, Yo still manages to stand against both of his friends, despite even missing an arm. And as they get ready to go in for the last attack, both Ren and Horo feel it's kind of hard to deal with that they're still being held at bay even though it's 2 against 1. It's essentially Yo showing such strong convictions that make it seem as though they're not even actually trying, which they are. They are desperately trying to take him down to show him that his ideals aren't effective in this situation, but he holds firm to his belief and he holds his ground. And during the course of the fight, Horo and Ren actually kind of start to come around a little bit to Yo's way of thinking. Despite the fact that they do have the upper hand still, they do find themselves kind of wanting to go along with what Yo is thinking. You have the interruption of the fight by an unknown assailant, and that ends up being none other than Lyserg, who says that the match no longer has any meaning, revived by Lady Sati, in order to kind of shake up the events of the shaman fight, with two of the teams that the patch thought were advancing withdrawing, meaning that the 4 teams that will advance, mostly through process of elimination, are Team Funbaryosen, Yo's team, Team The Ren, the Star Group, specifically Hao's team, and the newly reformed Team X1, since, Lyserg, Jean, and Marco are all still alive. I do love Sati just doing her damnness to circumvent the patch, and because the patch only gets so involved with things, they can't really override any of this. Although the patch were already kind of playing dirty with helping out Hao to a certain degree, so it's only fair. And with that, the tournament is technically over, the primary tournament. Although Red Sub's just like, I don't remember dropping out. The decision basically made by Yo's dad. And Lyserg is back and more powerful than ever. And while Horo doesn't really want to accept any of this, Ren realizes that Lyserg has gained some real intense power. And it's actually kind of funny, because the power that Lyserg managed to gain is literally the control of the flames of his own hatred, which is kind of hilarious to a certain degree, because if you go to the original anime, Lyserg gains his new Oversoul, his giant Oversoul, through combining the spirit of Morphine with all the angels of the X-Laws in a bid to protect the spirits of some of the X-Law members. And with their powers combined, it creates a brand new angelic Oversoul. And it's a situation where it honestly feels like it should be the inverse for the two adaptations, because manga and newer anime Lyserg gains power from his hatred and managing to control it so that it does not burn him alive. But the manga and newer anime Lyserg didn't really display as much hate and vitriol and malice as the original anime's Lyserg. That was something that he was just basically almost consumed by. But it was through his love and caring for the X-Laws that he was able to see that he deep down didn't want to walk down that path. That was not the true him. And while I have my reservations of how that was done, I know a lot of other people feel that it was a great moment of character for him. It's just that I feel like Lyserg should have gone through a little bit more to have that bit of a turn, but that's neither here nor there. Lyserg managed to gain control over this new angelic Oversoul, this new angelic combination, through love and compassion and a want to help others, which feels like it should be the MO of the manga Lyserg. But it works out this way because, in the original anime, Lyserg was walking down the path of angels and all that. It makes sense since Morphine is kind of like a pixie, which are always kind of like smaller angelic beings. So it only makes sense that the combination of that with the direction that the original anime went with gigantic Oversouls, Morphine would just basically become this new angelic being. And for the manga and newer anime, Lyserg is walking down a path where he is one of the 5 who will gain control over the elements, as well as the elemental spirits. Chocolove has always talked about the winds of laughter, so of course his element is wind. Yo is so grounded, and through his battle with Ren, we see that his elemental spirit is earth. Horo has always been one to control ice, and an aspect of ice is water, moisture, so of course that's his element. Ren, with the creation of his Bushin Yu-2, gained the power to control the element of thunder, electricity, and all that. So the only thing left was the element of fire, and it's kind of a weird irony that Lyserg would gain the power of flames and the spirit of fire, which used to belong to Hao, and thus it has made his destiny to claim the spirit of fire as his own. So in the manga, you get Mastama Dolkim, and in the original anime, you get Angel Advent Morphine. But you still get the angel motif with Mastama, who was a angel, who just essentially carried out punishments for God. In episode 60 of the original anime, titled Friends, Lyserg shows off his new giant oversoul in the attempt to rescue Ren and the others. And this goes in line with the direction where the original anime was focusing more on giant oversouls, but the manga was focusing more on armored oversouls. And thus the tournament is officially brought to an end. Although something kind of comedic that the newer anime does cut out is that Ren, he still wanted to keep going with the fight, just to see how his power matched up against Lyserg's. So did Horo. He wanted to settle things. Ava also tells Chocolove, he didn't get to really fight or do much of anything, so he can participate. And Lyserg says he'll fight on Yo's side to make things a little bit more fair, which I feel like that's saying something. And Yo, he just wants to chill out and rest because he's just like, I'm kind of done, guys. We then enter into volume 30 of the manga, and everyone ends up resting up at the hot springs. And it was during the previous fight that Ren found out he was the weakest out of everyone. And the manga makes it a little bit more clear, whereas the anime kind of makes it a little bit dubious. Chocolove is the strongest out of them because of his 2 trips to hell. And between Abba and Mick, he's strong, he's fast, he's just the most powerful overall. His second trip to hell really helped him grow to be the strongest, Lyserg being the second strongest because of Morphine and Zuriel. And then I think it was Yo, then Horo, then Ren in terms of power. But Ren does ask the $1 million question, why Lyserg would choose the same attribute as Hao. Is it a challenge, or is it just something that Lyserg is reflecting upon? And thus arrives Hao to answer all of their questions. And of course, Lyserg wants to throw down, and he shows off his Armored Oversoul, and basically explains it to them, because it's kind of a situation where it's just like, you're no challenge to me, so he explains its strengths and its weaknesses, but he also laments that someone specifically showed them how to gain Armored Oversouls, namely Pascal Abu. And Pascal Abu just makes it very clear, it's just like, it was to defeat you, bro. And thus the 5 warriors have officially been assembled. Taoism, with the ability to control thunder, moisture, which forms snow for the Hokkaido people, the eagle, which represents wind and is a symbol of the Aztecs, earth that creates metals, and fire that consumes everything. And Lyserg makes it clear that the only reason he uses fire is because of the fires of hatred that would have otherwise consumed his own soul. And so even Lyserg is just like, take a bath if you want to, do whatever you want, I'll challenge you in due time kind of situation. But Horo can't really accept it like that. But Yo knows that Hao is here to discuss a very important incident, that the island is slowly being surrounded by military vessels, and Hao doesn't want those vessels to come in contact with the lost continent of Mu. And thus we enter into chapter 259, that plate. Horo doesn't really know how to respond to any of that, which is kind of funny. And this is where everyone becomes familiar with the fact that Hao can read minds. And also the first instance of it being implied that Horo has a girl that he likes. Mu is a continent that's sank in the ocean 12,000 years ago, apparently because it incurred the wrath of the god. It's actually the place that the shaman fight is usually held, the place where the very first Shaman King was crowned. And the Patch have the ability to transport people there since they're able to create various different crafts and such. It is essentially a major access point to get to the Great Spirit, and it is a place where Hao feels he will be crowned Shaman King and destroy the whole of mankind. We then cut a little bit forward in the manga to Marco finally waking up from his injuries, and we see that Lasso as well as Anohol have kind of been waiting for him to wake up so that everyone, all the essentials to proceed with the shaman fight can be properly assembled because they have to go with tradition. But Lasso also needs to appraise Marco of the situation. Yo lets them know about the battleships and Hao wants their help in holding them off till they can head to Mu. And the Patch won't really do anything since it involves non-shaman. And it's unknown what would happen if a human did interfere. And Hao makes it known that the reason this is happening is because of Manta's father. And Hao makes it known that this mostly happened because Manta was brought here. And thus this is a situation he feels that Yo should help deal with. Take responsibility for what happened. We're in chapter 260, One Bad Woman. Now, several scenes are all cut out from the manga at this point. Manta pretty much passing out because of the information. Lyser questions Hao coming to them for help. He thinks that maybe with Hao being overwhelmed, maybe there's something they can exploit there. But because Hao can read minds, they can't really exploit anything like that. But it's obvious Yo is taking things a little bit hard. Everyone's just ended up at a bit of a loss as to what to do next, how to overcome Hao. We cut forward a little bit again. This is the point where the anime is jumping around a lot in terms of the manga's content, but it's kind of started to do that ever since the end of the Osoru-san flashback, with Lasso getting Marco up to speed on what's been going on. And Lasso makes it known that there are some shamans in the military fleet as well as a former member of the X-Laws who has their arsenal at hand. That could actually be devastating to the X-Laws. And so everyone agrees to work together for this common goal, to keep the shaman fight going forward, because who knows what would happen if it didn't. We then cut back to chapter 259, where Manta's dad is talking with Tomoranzaki about all the information that they've gained. Like, Tomoranzaki did his research, and while they know that Hao will see them coming, they're prepared for that as well. They want the knowledge of the Great Spirit. And for some reason, something that the anime downplays is the fact that they had actually managed to capture Horohoro's dad in the process. That's why Horohoro's dad sailing away was such an important thing, because that's one of the elements that'll help lead Manta's dad to the lost continent of Mu. You then have a moment with Mikihisa and Redsub, who's a little pissed about Mikihisa just withdrawing their team without, even telling Redsub about it. And Mikihisa makes it known that Munzer returned to the Great Spirit, thus entrusting Redsub and Therium to him, essentially making them Mickey's adopted children, which, spoiler alert, becomes official later on. And Mikihisa doesn't want them participating in the shaman fight anymore. It's way too dangerous. I mean, it was always dangerous, but things are gonna get beyond what Mikihisa can keep them out of past this point. But we see that Redsub, he wants to still fight, and Manta laments what's going on. And Manta knows that it was Tomoranzaki because, he's the only other person who would know about this and be able to relay that information to Manta's dad. And Tomoranzaki was there during the entire discussion about the Great Spirit and this, that, and the other. While Manta wants to call up his dad and get things worked up, Yo kind of realizes that he doesn't actually know anything about Manta's family. But that's because Manta really doesn't care for his family too much. So Yo wants to accompany Manta to see if they can sort this all out. But Anna feels that it's pointless. She knows the relationship Manta has with his dad. She even shows that Manta's phone was actually bugged. Everything Manta has ever been saying has been spied on. But Anna kind of knew this was probably going to happen. And as it turns out, this was all a plan of Anna's. One more battle to help get him ready. One last bit of training, which is utterly insane. We then enter into chapter 261, the first and the last. And while Yo has his reservations about going up against normal people, especially Manta's father, Anna feels that this is the best case scenario for Yo to actually grow stronger. Shamans dealing with normal people. I mean, it's something they'll have to deal with regardless. Creations of the outside world can be the most dangerous thing of all. And Hao shows up because his home was kind of destroyed, but Hao is here because he feels that no one could kill him even in his sleep. But Ren, he also wants to join in on this chance to train. He wants to see if maybe he could gain a little bit of strength from this as well, and maybe see what Hao can do in combat. What the full breadth of his fighting ability actually is. And of course Chocolove and Horohoro join in, as well as Lyserg and Ryu. You have a cutscene of Caleb and the one announcer dude talking about, the sub has been built, but they're not really sure if they should even launch for Mu because the island's surrounded. It's a very complicated situation as we see the full breadth of what everybody will be dealing with them calling the inhabitants of the islands terrorists. And Ryu is feeling like, I don't really want to go up against the government, but they have healers, so even if any of them suffer fatalities, they'll be able to revive them, and they'll be departing from Mu in a couple of hours. They do cut out some of the interesting comments that Lasso has about, them scheduling the departure now so close to when they decide to take on these government vessels is like, has the Great Spirit foreseen them safely arriving? Will only their survivors be able to continue on to the fight? Will humans be able to set foot on the island of Mu? Like, it's a very complicated situation. But Yo makes Hao remember his promise not to kill too many people. Even with as many healers and resurrectors as they have, there's only so much of that they can all do. But Hao still feels this will be good training nonetheless. And even if the rest of their healers aren't able to continue healing past a certain point, Hao says he'll resurrect people himself. The resurrection spell is his to begin with, and he has plenty of Furyoku for it. And so for the first and last time, Yo and Hao will work together as brothers. And so the onslaught begins. The king is here. And thus ends the events of this comparison. Now, of course, there's no invasion of non-shaman forces that our heroes have to contend with in the original anime. And while it is a bit of a weird aside, it's still an interesting premise to have Yo and Hao fighting together, Manta's dad being involved in this capacity, one last bid to obtain greater strength by our heroes, to maybe see how Hao fight so they could maybe manage to work around it. It really goes to show that things are getting down to the wire with the time limit to head to the continent of Mu fast approaching. Things are gonna get pretty crazy. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. In this comparison, we had the conclusion of the fight of ideals and beliefs, Yo versus Ren, as well as Lyserg's new power-up on display. Which version did you prefer the most? The original anime or the manga and newer anime? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I personally really enjoyed it in the manga. Masama Dokim is a pretty cool oversoul, and I love the irony of its creation. Although I feel manga Lyserg doesn't have as much, he never felt like he had that much hatred in his heart for it to be essentially something he could control, the flames of hatred. But I really did love the showdown of Yo, Ryu, Faust, Lyser versus Chocolove, Ren, Horo. That was a nice little aside. And for that to essentially be the last real showdown in the main shaman fight, that feels pretty nice to me. Instead of, I know it kind of feels arbitrary, but it was a process that the patch felt was needed. And I kind of like it a little bit better than Ren just challenging Yo out of the blue, especially during a time-sensitive moment where they're trying to stop Hao from getting to the Great Spirit. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. That way you don't miss out on the next episode. Until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and you've just watched What's the Difference? Until next time, bye-bye.